Hi, this video is about present perfect progressive. We're going to start with the form. As usual, the form is not very difficult. You have two helping verbs, has or have, and been, which is the be verb. And then your main verb is always ing, which is called present participle. So according to your subject, you always have to choose has or have. Right? So use has for he, she, it. Use have for the other subjects. The be verb is always in past participle, which is been. So this middle part will never change. And then your main verb, ing. Here are a few examples of affirmative and negative and questions. And I have the verbs underlined. You can read those and pause the video. Notice for negative, we simply use not after the first part of the verb, after have or has, or we can use the contraction hasn't or haven't. For the questions, we have the first part of the verb and then the subject and then the rest of the verb. So as you look at these first examples of the forms, also start thinking about the meaning. What does this verb tense mean? Is it different from just using present perfect, like has increased? Is it different from using simple past, like increased? And do you think it's also different from present progressive, is increasing? So of course we have to talk about that next. Here's a diagram of the meaning with the timeline. So the orange line is now, and we're talking about an action that started in the past and continued. And it's continuing now. So it's kind of like two ideas in one. The action began in the past, plus it's continuing now. So here's a real example. He moved to St. Louis last year, plus he's living here now, equals he has been living in St. Louis since last year. So we can use this one sentence to communicate all of that. Simple past plus present progressive, and it turns into present perfect progressive. Also notice the time word since. So you're going to see a lot of similarities between present perfect and present perfect progressive, of course. For the meaning, you can also focus on the idea of recently. What does recently mean? In recent days. There's no strict rule about what it means, but it could be a few days ago, a few weeks ago, a few months ago. So today I'm making this video. Today is April 12th, 2020, and we are in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. So as I record this video, we are in the middle of this historic event, this pandemic. Many parts of life have changed recently. People are living in a way that's new and different. So this is a perfect example for present perfect progressive. Look at my examples. People have been practicing social distancing. Students have not been going to school. They have been learning online. Many people have been working from home. And healthcare workers have been fighting a war in hospitals across the world. So these examples are excellent examples for today. However, if you're watching this video much later, maybe in 2021, 2022, and beyond, then you would have to change the verb tense to talk about this pandemic. I hope it will be over and then we can just use simple past to talk about this pandemic. But right now we're in the middle of it. So these are the best examples. So when you make examples, it's going to depend on what's going on in your life right now. So I don't want to have to make a new video every time students learn this grammar. So you have to use your imagination a little bit. If you imagine that it's now April, then these things have been happening. If you imagine that it's November, some different things have been happening, right? So just keep in mind, this is something that started earlier, but it continued and it's still happening now. So it really depends on what your life is now. Okay, so, verb tenses get complicated when we try to think about which one we need to choose and how are they different. So the first thing I have for you is some good news, and I'm using abbreviations. I think you know what they mean, right? PP is present perfect, PPP, present perfect progressive. They are often the same, but your sentence has to meet these two requirements. So when are they the same? First, the sentence or question uses since, for, or how long. It has to be one of those. And the sentence or question uses one of these verbs. I have a very short list of just 4 verbs. Now, maybe there are some others, but don't worry about them. Just learn this short list of 4 verbs: live, work, study, teach, because these are actions that we always continue. Nobody can just work once and then they quit. Nobody can just study one day and then they're finished, right? These are actions that continue, continue, continue. So here's my example. I'm using the verb teach, and on the left I have present perfect. On the right I have present perfect progressive, and in the middle I have the equal sign. These are the same. Doesn't matter. I've taught at STLCC since 1993. Or I've been teaching at STLCC since 1993. Same meaning. Both of these are true about my life. So, sometimes they are the same. What do you think's coming next? Of course, sometimes they're different. Okay, so here's a nice side-by-side list showing you some differences. And, pause the video, check your textbook. Your textbook has all of this, but it's kind of nice to have it on one slide, side by side. I'm going to move forward. So this would be a good test. It says, can you remember the rules by comparing these examples? So on the left, I have examples of present perfect. On the right, I have present perfect progressive. And they are side by side, trying to get you to remember one of those rules on the previous slide. You could move your video backwards. But let's talk about these. X has sold his house. Y has been trying to sell his house. Okay, finished. The verb sell is finished. The verb try is not finished. So this really shows you how the action is continuing. He's been trying, continuing that action. C has lost 10 pounds. D has been exercising more, but he has been eating too much. Okay, these two show you the difference between result and just focusing on the action. Okay, so D has this continuing action of exercising, which is good. But he also has the continuing action of eating too much. So he doesn't really have the result that C has, right? Okay, next, J has lived in the same house for 30 years. K has been living with his cousin. So same verb, live, in both tenses. This example is trying to show you, if you want to talk about something temporary, then present perfect progressive would be good. You don't really want to live with your cousin for very long, right? Maybe just a couple days or a couple weeks. That's a temporary situation. If somebody has lived in the same house for 30 years, that is not temporary. So we probably would choose present perfect in that case. Okay, E and F. E has loved chocolate his whole life. F has been hating eggs his whole life. Okay, you see this one crossed off. Hopefully you remember the rule about stative verbs. So love is a stative verb, hate is a stative verb. What's the rule? I can't use progressive. Okay, I can't use present perfect progressive with any stative verb. So I can write it with present perfect. You could write this sentence about eggs with present perfect. F has hated eggs his whole life. And then finally, this is the rule about quantity. 50 students have read 3 books this semester. Counting, how many? 1, 2, 3. Use present perfect. 50 students have been reading, then put the title of the book for a few weeks. This one's talking about the length of time or how long. So present perfect progressive is very common there. Okay, as usual, you always have to think about vocabulary. What kind of verb is it? What does the verb mean? Is it an action that happens maybe one time and is finished? Or is it a verb that often continues? So again, side-by-side examples. Mr. A has graduated. Mr. B has been studying. You graduate one time. You study over and over and over. Ms. C has found a job. Great. It's finished, right? Ms. D has been working. That's not finished. Ms. E and Ms. F have made a decision. Great. It's finished. Ms. G and Ms. H have been thinking about something. Thinking. Maybe later they will make a decision. So you always have to think about what the verb means. Here's a special usage that you see sometimes. So I made a different diagram here. An action was in progress a short time ago, but it stopped. So in this case, it doesn't continue up to now. But now there is evidence of the action. There's something that you can see, or maybe smell, or taste, or notice. His hands are dirty. He's been working on his car. So maybe he's a mechanic. The evidence is the dirty hands. The actual action stopped maybe a few minutes ago, maybe half an hour ago. Okay, so read those examples of the special usage. And then finally, of course, you want to make your own examples. So if you simply think about what's been going on in your life with this idea of recently, you can create lots of good examples. What's been going on in St. Louis, what's been going on in the national news. Just take a look at the news online or on television and you can create lots of examples. What's been going on around the world or in your country of origin. Okay, goodbye.